Alright folks, here we are back once again with the Compaq Presario V6000. You can see there. And what we're going to do is we're going to try and change out the hard drive for an SSD because the hard drive is in bad health. Now I'm going to try and save the Windows 7 install that's on the hard drive that's in here. Somehow or another, I don't think that's really going to work. I think this will let me boot from the LAN. Yes. Let's see if it'll actually do it. So we'll try and take a backup of it this way. See if it'll actually manage to get through it. Again, I kind of doubt that it will, but yeah, that looks like that's going to end poorly. Nope, NTFS is inconsistent. So that is not going to work. We're going to have to try a different method of doing this. Well, I tried to go that method, doing the clone with a different program, and trying to boot that just made the system lock up, so that's good. That's a good sign. So, you know what? I think we're just going to forgo that. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to pull that hard drive out. And I'm going to put the new SSD in and we'll install an operating system that way. In fact, this I think is going to get Windows Vista. Okay, here's the original drive, which you can see. Insofar as I can tell, is not the original drive. I don't see an HP part number on that anywhere. So I've replaced it with this 240 gig Kingston SSD. This is a Kingston HyperX SSD. I got a bunch of these, and they're not the most reliable thing in the world, but this one still happens to work, or at least it did. I guess we'll find out whether or not it still works. And like I said, I'm probably going to load this up with Windows Vista. Even though I know that there are definitely people out there who do not like Windows Vista. I'm certainly not in the pro Vista camp either. But it's got a Vista COA, and it's something interesting. In fact, this is actually probably going to end up as a dual boot system. But we'll start with Windows. Well, this might be a fool's errand. Go ahead and we'll hit escape here. Hopefully it will actually recognize that. Find the eject for the optical drive. And put our Windows Vista disk in the optical drive. See if it'll actually boot to it. Please work. I don't know if this optical drive is any good. Seems like it must be at least partially good. So, I guess we'll let that do its thing. And we'll see where we go from there. But like I said, or like I started to say at least, I wasn't able to find any Windows Vista specific drivers. So we'll have to see if I keep pressing with Vista, or if I just don't bother and make this a Linux-only PC. Because, like I said, I don't think I'm going to waste a Windows 7 activation on this piece of crap. Well, believe it or not, I think it actually has the display driver installed at the very least. But of course, that's Intel Video. It's pretty hard to screw that up. Things like the Ethernet and the... Although that's Pro 100 VE Ethernet, so that should work out of the box too. Wireless probably won't. That's Broadcom. That tends not to work on pretty much anything out of the box. And some of the other special controls probably won't either. I think you can get Windows Vista drivers for things like these hotkey buttons. but I wasn't able to find some of the core system devices like the audio and the Ethernet and the Wi-Fi, things like that. Although it did offer a Wi-Fi driver, it was for Pro Wireless, which this does not have. It has got Broadcom. Sort of like the Dells used to do at the time. If you didn't order the Centrino package, you ended up with Broadcom Wireless, and probably Broadcom Ethernet too, if I remember right, but at least this one's got Intel. So it's a little bit... should hopefully be a little bit easier to deal with. Even with an SSD, this is not exactly the fastest experience ever. I'm not really sure what the hell status of that SSD is. Believe it or not, the audio is actually working out of the box. I was pretty impressed by that. I don't think it sees the wireless, because you can see that light's orange, so I'm pretty sure that that means that the wireless is not being detected, which is fine. It's got the Aeroglass turned on, so it's definitely got the right video driver for the Aeroglass to work, which, again, out of the box, that's pretty impressive. So I guess I'm going to have to install the service packs. Now, the one thing that kind of does not fill me with a whole lot of confidence is that it did not take the product key when I went to go put that in during setup. So I bet it's going to give me some trouble with that. Okay, here we are the next day. Almost said next morning, but it's not really the next morning, considering it's just past 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's a much nicer day outside. Probably could be spending some time working on stuff out there, but no, we're still with this thing. I've noticed that it's extremely sluggish. Doing, well, just about anything. I could show you the Windows Experience Index scores. Oh, unrated. Well, it was rated before. Maybe I'll have to run this again. There's what it got out of the box. So, I guess not terrible for a Vista machine, but that CPU in particular is pretty low. Of course, it's only a Celeron M, so what do you expect? You probably could find like a Core Duo for this or something. I think it will take some of those, but I don't know if I really want to invest the time in upgrading the microprocessor, because I think that might kind of be a pain to get this thing apart. If my A900 is anything to go by, it's definitely a pain to get these apart, so... Okay, so the Windows side of this is pretty much done. Well, mostly anyway. I will have to straighten out the antivirus situation, because that doesn't seem to really want to work on its own. But I did mention that I was going to make this a dual boot system, and that is precisely what we're going to do. So let me hook up the network cable back to it again. We'll boot it up over the network, and we'll install Linux. Okay, boot Linux distribution. Ubuntu derivatives. I don't have 22.10 on here yet, which is fine. Yes, I'm about to do what you think I'm going to do. Those of you that have been around for a very long time, or those of you who just took a cursory look at my channel and sorted oldest to newest, will know that the first video I ever uploaded to YouTube was a rant video about how much this particular operating system sucks. And I wouldn't doubt that some of that had to do with the fact that the computer that I was running it on was not a very good laptop computer. Some of it might have been to do with the fact that that was the first release that I was experimenting with at the time. It was the first release of that particular piece of software. And, again, it was not very good. So, I found in later times that it's not too bad. So we're going to just go ahead and install it on this as a dual boot. I wanted a lightweight Linux distribution anyway, because this is a pretty hampered computer with only a Celeron M in it. It is 64-bit compatible, but only in a manner of speaking. This thing's never going to see more than 4 gigs of RAM. In fact, it's probably not going to see more than the 2 gigs that are installed in it right now. Okay, now we're going to just go ahead straight to the install, because we've already pretty much made up our mind here. I'm not sure if it actually opened or not. There's no real indication as whether or not it's opening. So, a little interesting. It also looks like my audio is not really working all that well. This system is not connected to the internet. Well, gee, it should be. It's connected to the network that it booted from, so that's kind of weird. Looks pretty active to me, so I don't know what's up with that. Whatever. Well, we're not in Moncton. It's kind of interesting. Doesn't seem to really work all that well. That's better. It's not in anywhere close to the correct location, but whatever. Not really my problem. Keyboard's fine. Install alongside. That should be good. We'll leave that alone. And we'll put in the rest of these details. Alright. And we'll take a look here at what's going on. It's fine to me. I've noticed that these don't really create swap partitions anymore, which is kind of interesting, but certainly okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So we will install now. Now's the point where it will probably stop working. Now, one thing that I have noticed about this system is that it runs particularly hot. And I'm not really totally sure why it runs so hot. I'm trying to find my infrared thermometer here. And you can see, take a look here, there's a pretty good average for what ambient is. Then I come to the laptop. The laptop's pretty warm. So I get up to 40 degrees there. So it's kind of interesting. Kind of lends some credence to the fact that some of these laptops that were produced back in the mid-2000s were not all that great in terms of efficiency. I mean, this isn't even a Pentium 4. Can you imagine if this had a Pentium 4 in it? Yikes. Alright, so we'll let that do its thing, and then I'll come back once it has finished or given me an error message and made my life difficult. Well, that's not working all that well. Wonder if that's going to be a sign of things to come. Still going, though. Okay, I started this at 8:47 actually. It's now 9:03. And this is now complete. We'll hit done. I did select to reboot. So we'll see what we get out of it now. When I ran Ubuntu Linux on the computer that I had, the L300D040, if you're wondering, when I ran it on that, it had a lot of trouble with overheating. So I'm wondering if we're going to have the same problem with this. Well, that's an interesting little boot menu. So there is one more thing I will need to do in order to get the wireless working. The audio was working, even though I know that that icon there is just orange. there was audio. I don't know if the audio actually works, but I do know that the volume control actually did something. That's interesting. It turned blue there for a second. So I'll have to try something like YouTube and see if it will actually give me audio. Okay, Wi-Fi is now installed and working. There's a very nice Ask Ubuntu Stack Exchange post that explains how to do that for a Broadcom wireless card, such as what's installed in here. So, assuming that I actually remember to do it, I'll go ahead and I'll throw that in the video description. But it's not very difficult to do at all. Last thing I'll probably need to do is test out the audio, make sure that works. I'm pretty sure it does, but, you know, you never know. Okay, I've noticed something very interesting about this computer. The sound does in fact work, but watch this.
Viewers who are wandering by my YouTube channel, this is UXW Bill once again with an interesting, well, hopefully interesting computer video for you all to watch. I think it's fair to say that a lot of people would probably be in agreement about one thing, and that one thing is that Windows Vista really it ought to be. I've seen some systems that...
I'll hit pause on it. I'll wait a couple seconds. It actually seems like it shuts off the audio subsystem, which is really kind of strange. I'm not really sure why it would do that. But I think on that note, I think we're pretty much done with the system. Go ahead and boot it back into Windows. Now, of course, I do still need to figure out the antivirus on Windows, but I don't think that'll be that difficult. Also noticed, I think I've already mentioned it at one point, that when you reboot the computer, it actually turns off and then turns itself back on, which is kind of an odd reaction. See if Windows Vista still boots. Now, even though this is on an SSD, it still kind of takes a little bit longer than it probably should. There's that pop. Oh, would you look at this? Disk check required. Well, I guess we'll let it do its check disk thing. Make corrections to the file system. So I guess we'll see if it boots. Now I might have to run check disk twice. I know sometimes that's something that it decides it wants to do. And it's doing something. Rather intriguingly, it seems like the volume is a lot louder under Linux than it is under Windows. Because that is maximum volume, and of course, because now I'm running Linux, it set my clock to UTC, which I wish it wouldn't do. I'm sure there's a way to figure that out, and fix that, but... Well, I'm going to go ahead and I'll rerun this benchmark. That'll be the first thing that I do. See if I can actually get through it. That hard disk score might go up. Actually, it might not. I don't think it will. Yeah, looks like nothing has changed as far as the experience index scores go. Kind of interested that that hard drive is limited to a 5.9, but I guess that's probably just a limitation of what I presume would be a SATA 1.5 interface. Might be SATA 3, but 3 gigabit per second, I should say. SATA 2, where SATA 3 is 6 gigabits per second. That's what the current generation is at. We've been at that for quite a long time. It's kind of amazing that they haven't really come out with like a SATA 4 yet or something similar, but I guess everybody's moved over to NVMe and such like things, so whatever, time marches on. And speaking of time marching on, I think this has turned into quite a bit more of a video epic than I really intended it to, so I'm going to go ahead and close it off there. Thank you for watching, and if you have any comments, feel free to leave them down below.